Hi. Before we start, I just wanted to pop in and give a quick disclaimer about this video. These kinds of discussions can lead to pretty heated debates about elitism and accessibility, and trust me, we'll touch on those in the main video too. But before we get into the main video, I just want to hit two things quick. One, this video isn't targeted at casual players. If you play rhythm games only for fun or are happy with your skill level and aren't concerned with targeted improvement, this video is not for you. Keep doing your thing and enjoying the game. Honestly, you're probably having more fun than a lot of players I know. Two, this is only my experience and my thoughts on rhythm game progression. But after 10 plus years playing rhythm games, I figured I could at least take a crack at it and offer up my advice and opinions on rhythm game skill progression. So your results may vary, my advice and opinions won't be perfect, I'm just a guy. With that out of the way, let's talk about how you really improve at rhythm games. Okay, so here we are at stage 1. Just an FYI, I'm going to be using Sound Voltex as my frame of reference for this video, as it's the game I have the most experience with. But this should apply to generally any rhythm game. At this stage, I have no recommendations for you except play a lot. This level of skill is mostly characterized by a lack of familiarity with the game itself. Players are often seen not understanding the controls or the menu, generally being very stiff during gameplay, and sometimes even looking down to correct their hands or to check the buttons for the next note coming down the lanes, as the game is going to be quite forgiving at this point. This is the total entry level of the game, with no experience to help you and no carryover from other rhythm games most of the time. As such, at the beginning of the game, just take the time to play as much as you can and you'll naturally improve. A big theme of progression is going to be your ability to tolerate just being kinda bad. So the more you're able to just play and deal with kinda sucking a little bit, you'll progress really fast. Especially if it's a game you can play consistently, this is probably a level you can get out of in a few weeks or less. But if it takes longer than that, that's okay too. Just keep at it and you'll get a feel for the game you're playing naturally, no matter what the game is. Everyone's progression speed is different. So if you play pretty regularly, you'll probably progress through the first stage of whatever game you're playing and start moving up into this second stage. It'll probably be pretty apparent at this point how fast you're improving, both because of being at the early stage of the game you're playing, and also because of the way difficulty is usually balanced in these games. Something some people may not understand about rhythm game difficulty scales is that a lot of times it's roughly exponential. That is to say, the distance from, say, 1 to 14 in Sound Voltex is probably similar to the distance between 14 to 16 in skill. The higher levels take longer to advance through than the lower ones. As such, this stage of the game is often characterized by an increased ability to keep up with slower charts easily, but then you might get shut down hard by charts near your cap. It's worth noting when this happens that you are still on the just play more stage of the game. It's just going to be more noticeable that you're running into harder stuff because the game is, well, getting harder. And it will likely take you a bit longer to progress than before. Other than being patient and playing the game, you can use this time in your skill progression to do a few things. First off, you can spend time adjusting your gameplay settings. At the lowest levels, it isn't really necessary to mess with them, but as you increase in difficulty, you're going to notice a few things that can be fixed pretty easily with basic settings adjustments. The most obvious of these is scroll speed. Pretty much every single rhythm game has a scroll speed modifier that changes how fast the notes come down the lanes toward the strike line. A common problem is that new players are intimidated by seeing a higher level player play the game at a high difficulty and particularly a high speed, because the notes are coming so fast down the screen. What many don't realize is that this is largely a comfort setting. They aren't playing on these speeds because the game explicitly sets the note speed to that value. They have over time adjusted their speed modifier to a speed that they find comfortable for reading and processing patterns. The most noticeable benefit to increasing scroll speed is that it increases the visual separation of notes, allowing easier visual processing. If you don't believe me, try starting a hard song in any game on the 1x speed modifier and watch as the blob of notes slowly approaches your strike line, ushering in your doom. As you increase the speed modifier, not only will the notes visually separate more, but less of them will also be on the screen at one time, giving you less to visually process at once. You don't want to crank your speed to max. It still does increase the reaction time needed to hit notes, and if one note at a time is appearing on screen at Mach 10, you're not going to be able to do much with that either. So during this part of progression, take some time and try adjusting your settings. Finding a speed mod you like, or maybe adjusting visual things like lane beams and note bombs, might give you a bigger buff than you may think, and it can really improve your gameplay experience also. The other thing you should be doing at this point in progression, especially if you're thinking about playing the game more or considering trying to improve at it, is figuring out if you enjoy it. This might sound like an obvious comment, but it's a surprisingly common thing for people going headfirst into a new game to think that they're going to be able to dedicate the time and get good at it, only to end up really hating the game or parts of it later down the line because they didn't really understand how the game might change as they go. This happened to me in 2DX. After committing to a 10th Dan goal way too early in my progression, by the time I got to around 7th or 8th Dan, I realized I didn't really like the way 2DX high difficulty content played. But in my mind, I had already committed to the goal and I needed to get it. When I finally got it a few years later, I felt no satisfaction and only relief, and I basically quit the game cold turkey, only returning to 7 key in the last year or so. It's a bit of an extreme example, but I'm throwing it out there as a word of warning. By comparison, I'm still enjoying Sound Voltex pretty much every time I play it. And you'll improve faster if you're having fun too. So if you're having fun playing the game, even at the lower levels, you're on a great track toward being able to progress in the future if you so choose. And if you decide the game might not be for you, that's fine. There are loads of rhythm games out there for you to try, so maybe a different one will do it for you. After playing a bit more, dialing in your settings, and getting a feel for it, you'll start to progress more toward the intermediate level of the game you're playing. At this stage, you'll probably be able to play almost all of the low to middle end straightforward charts the game throws at you, but may fall over when presented with tech that requires game-specific knowledge. This might be a good time to mention the term Earth Power. Earth Power, or jiriki in Japanese, is a term loosely associated with your base ability to read and hit notes, excluding individual difference skills. Individual difference is another term you hear in the realm of skill discussion in rhythm games, referring to charts that require a skill that one player might be significantly better at than another player. While Earth Power is your general ability, individual difference is your strengths and weaknesses. You might be good at jacks, but bad at trills. You might be able to play streams, but struggle to hit notes with odd timings. These are in the category of individual difference. One of the most infamous individual difference charts of all time is Daiuchu Stage Exhaust in Sound Voltex. The ability to read and play repeating patterns is an individual difference skill set, and one that can cause even the highest level players in Sound Voltex to struggle. It has such a wide range of performance that the most well-kept Sound Voltex clearing difficulty tier list suggests its difficulty anywhere between a low level 15 to a high level 18, depending on your abilities. At this level of the game, your Earth Power will be increasing rapidly, but you'll probably start to struggle on individual differences and game-specific charting. Not only because it's new to you, but also because you might be playing the game in ways that are inefficient or make certain techniques harder. That's why at this stage, my main recommendation is going to be to focus on correcting your playstyle mistakes. This will differ from game to game. In Beatmania 2DX, if you're not using one of the commonly used playstyles that dictate how you arrange your hands, you may have to take some time to learn one. In DDR, you'll need to fully stop yourself from returning to the center panel after every note and start taking advantage of the bar for balance and momentum. In Sound Voltex, you'll have to stop hand-blading the knobs and get used to moving your hands a bit more around the controller when tracking lasers. The nice part is that these are all things that will skyrocket your game skill the quicker you understand and implement them. The unfortunate part is that some of them will require breaking bad habits, relearning, and sometimes temporarily regressing in your skill progression. Two things worth mentioning here are, 1, this is normal and you'll start progressing again quickly. Remember, you're relatively early, quote unquote, in the game at this point. And 2, this is probably the most common quitting point for people who make it past the early stages, and if you fall into this camp, don't feel bad. Skill progression in these games can require a lot of patience, and it doesn't reflect poorly on you if you don't want to push through an uncomfortable part of the game. That said, I do want to stress that trying to break these habits now is important. A lot of the examples I gave, and of course some stuff I didn't mention, not only have the potential to slow down your progress, but actually to permanently gate you off from certain content if you don't make adjustments to your playstyle. Try to find other players or watch high-level play and compare against your own habits to see what you might be doing or not doing that can be adjusted to make gameplay a bit smoother. It'll pay dividends for your progress in the long run. Progression starts to slow around this stage of the game, but after breaking out of some bad habits and continuing to improve, you'll find yourself progressing to a more advanced level of play. There aren't a huge amount of general skills left to learn at this point, and a lot of techniques you learn moving forward from here are game-specific. Progress at this stage of any game, in my opinion, is dictated by only two factors. The first one is time. Now, the expression "just play more" is a common one, and I've even already used it in this video. But trust me, the most effective way to improve at rhythm games, especially from this point of progression onwards, is just time. Play a lot. Now, depending on how old you are or where you're at in your life, the amount of time you might be able to commit will vary greatly. People with full-time jobs can't expect to put in the same amount of hours as people in high school, and that's okay. Any time you can spend on it is good and will move you forward towards your goals. I'd still advise things like taking rest days, maybe playing day on, day off, and not having too long of sessions, but in general, playing a lot is going to be the best way for you to improve. The complement to this, and the other factor that will determine your ability to improve, is your willingness to tolerate content you cannot play. What I mean is basically your ability to sit there and play content that is too hard for you. This might sound counterintuitive and is often unpleasant, but a very real factor of skill progression is that you're going to have to expose yourself to stuff you can't do very well so that you can get better at it over time. There's a great page I often reference on 2dx.org that describes the general relationship between a player's skill ceiling and skill floor. To quote from the article, it defines the low point, or skill floor, as a player's ability to consistently demonstrate a certain level of performance, whereas the high point, or the skill ceiling, is a player's ability to inconsistently demonstrate a level of performance above the normal range. It implies your skills are somewhere between the skill floor and the skill ceiling, and goes on to detail how one might increase the ceiling or the floor. This is where your willingness to tolerate content you can't play comes in. Many rhythm game players have a tendency to trend toward focusing on stabilizing the low end rather than increasing the high end. Why should I struggle to fight through a hard chart when I can focus on timing an easier chart? Plus then, if I work on timing an easier chart, then my timing will get better on harder charts, right? While practicing your low end may improve your overall timing ability, it will not actually improve your ability to play a certain pattern better. That's because the patterns in the harder charts could be faster, longer, or interspersed with other patterns that may change how you play them. They may be presented in ways that are not present at all in lower levels. So playing patterns at lower levels will never allow you to improve at those patterns at higher levels. The 2dx.org article has a great image representing this, supposing that raising the floor tends to not meaningfully raise the ceiling, but raising the ceiling tends to meaningfully raise the floor, allowing you to extend your skill set coverage. I would highly recommend reading the entire article if you've watched this far into the video. It's my personal favorite article on rhythm game skill progression. I've linked it in the description below. It's focused on 2DX, but the concepts should apply to any rhythm game. If you're familiar with immersion language learning, some of these concepts might actually sound familiar, and I believe that a lot of those concepts apply here. Big proponents of immersion learning tout the benefits of tons of input, aka time, and your ability to tolerate ambiguity, aka not understand parts of your input, as two of the biggest factors for success. Those pretty much exactly follow what I suppose here in this section. Spend a lot of time playing the game, trying hard songs, failing, and trying again. It's okay to sometimes hang around your comfort zone. Pushing for clears on hard songs you can't play well can be demotivating. But when you feel like you're having a good session, direct some of that energy into trying to raise that skill ceiling. The other thing I'd like to touch on is a phrase that often comes up around this level of skill progression in rhythm games. 15 to 17 range in Sound Voltex, 9 to 10 in 2DX, 12 to 14 in DDR. Around this point, you might hear the phrase, "This is where the game starts." This phrase is somewhat controversial and can come off a bit gatekeepy. The game only starts here? What do you mean? Did all those other levels mean nothing? Am I not a real player of this game? Am I not really playing the game? I don't speak for everyone here, but personally, when I use that phrase, I'm simply referring to the point in a game's difficulty curve where a game can meaningfully take advantage of every mechanic it has. At a low level, many rhythm games are focused on easing the player into the gameplay loop. Note density is low, unique gimmicks are unseen, and songs can be played with basically any settings. But as the difficulty gets higher, the game demands more and more from the player, to the point where the game can finally take advantage of all the mechanics that make it a unique, fun, and difficult video game. In sample text, this is characterized by more convoluted laser patterns and an introduction to more one-hand heavy charts, requiring the player to move their hands much more freely around the controller. This is where the game starts, because at the low level this wasn't even a concern of the player at all. But now the game can push back against the player and ask them, can you handle this? This is only possible once the player has a certain baseline skill and understanding of the game. The phrase, "you have to know the rules before you break them," comes to mind. The game can't start breaking its own rules until the player understands what the rules are. This certainly doesn't mean you weren't playing the real game before this point. If you're playing the game and enjoying it, you're a player of that game. The title of rhythm game player is not reserved only for people who are able to play a certain level of chart. But getting to that start of the game milestone is a really major point of progression, and it's also where the game can truly become a lot more fun. It's a worthy goal to strive for. By this point of the game, you're getting into expert territory and are certainly well above average at the game you're playing. As stated in the previous section, time and exposure to difficulty are going to mainly lead to improvement here. For better or worse, you'll just have to play a lot and keep honing your skills to move upward from here. On the bright side, in most games, by the time you get to this point, there aren't going to be too many specialized skills to learn, and you might instead find yourself developing specified strategies for certain patterns and charts instead. Something maybe worth pointing out at this stage, since your main goal is to expose yourself to as much variety as possible, is that it might be worth taking advantage of things that force you into more exposure to variety. Random song select, playing custom charts on simulators, or even using features like mirror or random can really expose you to patterns and force you to learn methods and strategies that you don't normally use. Using random options can also be a good way to just enjoy the game and play without grinding, since it might allow you to take it a bit easier and not worry so much about your score. Play as much as you can and see as much different content as possible. A big discussion point amongst players these days is that newer players of legacy rhythm games like DDR or 2DX have the benefit of 2 decades worth of content to help you improve. There's so much more content, it's easier to expose yourself to certain patterns and get better at them. So take advantage of it. If you made it this far, you're in the endgame. This stage is characterized by a lack of ability to naturally progress upward without targeted grinding and dedicated practice. A section of the game where getting a new top play requires a significant amount of effort, and where you're legitimately running out of content to play or have seen most of it. Funnily enough, while the last 2 stages were largely categorized by exposure and grinding, at this stage to keep pushing your skill will require conscious targeted improvement. You'll have to learn what your strengths and weaknesses are to take advantage of them or to train them. You'll probably be spending sessions improving your base timing enough to get perfects or something close to them. And you'll be spending time talking with other players or studying game systems to figure out what is needed to continue progression. Luckily, at least in my experience, at this point of progression, you'll probably have a pretty good idea of what you need to do to improve. You just need to decide whether or not you want to spend the time to do it. Something else I'd also like to point out around this level, and maybe the previous one, is that around this point in progression, players often tend to get very negative about their own skill level. You'll very often hear high or top level players complaining about being quite bad at the game, or that they're not good compared to other players at their level. It's important to put these stages of skill into context with the previous ones. Being at these levels puts you well above the average player's skill level, and continued progression upwards can be an extremely difficult climb. Every player's journey is their own, and your progress and skill is not defined by others. So while it can be fun to have rivals as a complement to your progression, remember to give yourself credit for how far you've come if you've made it here. At this point, there's certainly nothing left for me to teach you. I can't tell you how to become a ranker or how to become Japanese and enter BPL. I just don't got it in me. But I do know that progression in these games is possible and realistic. You don't have to worry about being the best. There is so much fun to be had between the bottom and the top of the skill curve. So many songs to play, scores to achieve, and unlocks to get. Rhythm games are a genre with an absolute ocean of content for you if you want to take the time to get good enough to play a lot of it. So I hope this video can give you at least a little bit of an idea of how to get better at rhythm games. The skill progression of rhythm games has given me a lot of entertainment and pride in my ability to improve over the years. So if I can lead at least one other person to that outcome, then this video will have done its job. Thanks for watching, and thanks so much to my supporters on Patreon. Right around when this video comes out, it'll be my 10-year anniversary of being into arcade rhythm games, so I figured this was a fitting video to release right around the 10-year mark. Check out my Twitter, Twitch, Blue Sky, Discord. All that stuff is in the description below. And of course, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I have a lot of other stuff coming this year, and I'll see you guys next time.